people who've actually slept with their step-sibling or sibling? How did it happen, and how was your relationship affected? Story 1. My girlfriend and I were both appalled when her uncle married my mother after only 2 months of knowing each other. We had been together since the ages of 13 and 21, so the whole situation was quite a shock. We ended up taking some time apart for about 7 months due to all the negative comments we received for being related in such a way. But eventually we got back together and tied the knot when we were 19. We decided to keep our distance from them until our daughter was born, and by that time, they had already gone their separate ways. Story 2. After arriving in town for her visit to see her dad, my stepsister gave me the unmistakable come-hither look. I was warned by her brothers and my stepdad not to give in to my desires, but I couldn't resist. We spent the rest of her stay together, falling madly in love and thinking we had managed to keep our relationship a secret. Unfortunately, when she left, our secret was out, and I got a bad beating for it. For the next few years, she wasn't allowed to visit, but we kept in touch, and eventually, after I graduated college, I moved to the same city as her. We've been together ever since, and now, 11 years later, we have 2 beautiful children, a daughter who is 5 and a son who is 3. Everyone in our family is completely accepting of our relationship, and often we joke about how it all began. Story 3. We were both in foster care, and our rooms were next door to each other with a shared bathroom. When the foster parents found out, they sent him away to join Jobs Corps. The foster mom then tried to get him in trouble by telling my caseworker, and detectives showed up at my school to ask if it was true. Knowing they were trying to accuse him of statutory rape, I refused to let it ruin his life and denied everything. Years later, when I was 22, I ran into him in 2012. We spent the day together, and I joked that it was a good thing I never had his babies, making the moment a little awkward. I'm sure my awkwardness had something to do with it, too. Story 4. My ex and her brother had something going on, and my friend found out about it when they discovered texts between them. Even though I was tempted to call them out, I simply chose to end the relationship I had with the girl. My friend, however, made sure to let the whole workplace know about it. Soon after, they decided to leave the call center we were all working at, and I haven't had any contact with them since. On rare occasions, I spot the brother on social media, but apart from that, I have no clue what happened to them. Story 5. I went on vacation with my dad and his girlfriend, now wife, and her kids. One of her daughters started being very touchy-feely during a card game that we were sitting next to each other for. She said she needed to go upstairs to use the bathroom. After about 5 minutes, I said I had to pee too, and she was in the bedroom next to the bathroom, and we kind of locked eyes in a way that made me know she wanted to mess around. So I went in and pulled my shorts down, and she proceeded to give me probably the best blowout of my life. We did it 2 more times on that vacation, and everything stopped when we got back home. The relationship has always reminded me about the same, and there's no animosity, though we haven't spoken in a few years just because we've grown in separate directions. Story 6. My cousin and I had been close since we were kids and have had a sexual connection that just kept growing over time. We eventually became intimate in our early 20s, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world for us. We both felt so comfortable with it. It's almost as if it were normal. Though I don't think of it as wrong, I'm still curious as to why this situation doesn't bother me the way it does when I hear of other incestuous relationships. That's why I'm considering seeing a therapist, to find out why this was okay in our case and to remember the exact moment we started down this path. Story 7. My ex had slept with her stepbrother. Well, technically he raped her, but she was too innocent to say or do anything about it, so she let it go on. She was 13 after the family found out about it. She and her stepbrother were both removed from their childhood homes. It was discovered when he was 18 and she was 15. So, of course, he was put on the streets and she went to live with her biological mom. Her biological mom lives where I do, and that's how we met. Evidently, she had a rough go with most people because she thought sex was the only way to make people happy. The girl was really messed up. She actually left me for a chance to go back where she came from and live with her stepbrother and his friends. She apparently enjoyed him a lot. Story 8. My cousin and I have been close for close to 2 decades now, and our relationship has steadily grown in intensity. We started exploring our physical connection when we reached our early 20s, and it felt like the most natural thing to do. We were both so relaxed and content with it that it almost seemed like the norm. I don't consider this wrong in any way, but I'm still curious as to why I don't feel the same way when I hear about other incestuous pairings. That's why I'm thinking of consulting a therapist to figure out why it's acceptable in our case and to trace back to the exact moment we began this journey. Story 9. When I was in high school, my parents went on a cruise for their anniversary and let me stay home. When they came back, they announced that they had met another couple on the cruise and had fallen in love with each other's spouses. They all got divorced. My mom and dad got remarried with the husband and wife, respectively, and then I found out that my step-parents had a son and we're all going to live in the same house together. I was pretty understandably pissed at the time, and my stepbrother was kind of an ass to me. But then one day I woke up to the dude effing kissing me. Long story short, there was a shitload of drama and on-again, off-again bullshit. There was a big scare when we found out my mom and his dad had a one-night stand like 16 years prior and thought we might be blood-related. We're not, but we finally figured out how to make it work, married for 20 years. Story 10. When I was 15, I got drunk for the first time with my brother and stepbrother at the time. We were in the basement, which doubled as my stepbrother's bedroom and a lounge/hangout area. I passed out in one of the reclining chairs and woke up in SB's bed to him touching me sexually and trying to put his D in my mouth. He was too big and I was too out of it to do anything about it. We'd been really close before, but it ruined everything and I've barely been able to talk to him since. Story 11. My mom and her childhood boyfriend's bond was so strong that even after the divorce of their respective parents, they stayed close. In fact, many years later, when their own parents had split, they found themselves to be step-siblings again. Through it all, their friendship never wavered, and eventually, after all the tumult, they rekindled their relationship and got married. Story 12. 50 years ago, my aunt got pregnant at just 15 years old, much to the dismay of her strict Catholic grandparents. As a result, she was eventually forced to put the baby up for adoption. However, that wasn't the end of the story. Many years later, the girl was able to find my aunt and subsequently met her two half-brothers. To make matters more complicated, she ended up in a relationship with one of them, her full-blooded half-brother. Unfortunately, we are not in contact with them at this time. Story 13. I went to my uncle's house to pick up some tools for my dad, but when I arrived, my uncle invited me inside. She was watching a show we both liked, so I joined her on the sofa or bed. As time passed, it got colder, and my uncle got a blanket for us. She then grabbed my hand, and I could tell that she wanted something more. I reached for her thigh, and she opened her legs, giving me the green light. The rest, as they say, is history. We both felt comfortable after that, but I did distance myself. The last time I saw her, she was married with children and doing well. Story 14. When we were 11 and 12, my sister and I spent a lot of time playing around and having fun. Although it did have a psychological impact on me during my teenage years, as I thought I was a sinner, I eventually overcame it. When we were in our late 20s, my sister and I discussed it briefly with a hint of humor while having drinks. I agreed it was strange, but we never spoke of it further. I've never shared this with anyone else, and I hardly ever think about it. Story 15. We were both 19 years old when our parents married, and we had a New Year's Eve party. Neither of us had ever been drunk before, but that didn't stop us from drinking and partying away the night. After stumbling to bed, I heard the door slam open, and my stepsister stumbled in too. We talked a bit before saying goodnight, but one thing led to another. When we woke up the next morning, we were both like, WTF? That night, she came down to the basement to talk about it, and we agreed that the alcohol was the catalyst for what had happened. Then she suggested that since it's already happened once, why not again? But it never did, and we still see each other twice a year.